So we are deep into the holiday season right now, and as we like to do every year, we talk about chasing away the holiday blues and mental health. So joining me on this show, happy Thanksgiving, by the way, to everybody, Dr. Katie Fetzer, Dr. Mary Catherine Gastineau with the Wellness Studio right here in Baton Rouge. So we've been doing these holiday blues shows going all the way back to my audio podcast, which is on its way back next month, by the way, talking about this. So a lot of people, because of loss, go through the depths of despair this time of the year. So what is your advice to someone who may be struggling with depression or some kind of anxiety, separation, or whatever? What's your advice?
Absolutely. I love that you're doing this topic, especially this time of year, because the way that the kind of world will market it to people and put it to people is that it's this time that should be only about joy or only about happy, which can really create this incongruence with somebody that's internally really struggling. And I always first like to put some imagery to the scenario or the situation so that we can better grasp and truly feel what's happening. And really, if you just imagine like the world as this place of just a lot of events that are out of our control and a lot of noise that surrounds us, and a boat on water where there's just a storm that's constantly brewing, really you need an anchor that can really ground you. And during this time of the holidays, that anchor is really about truth and meaning. What do the holidays mean for somebody at that time? For many, it could be a very hard truth that they're facing, such as a loss of a loved one or grief. But even facing those hard truths with somebody that can help you through it really helps you to really grow through life, which is what we should be doing, and bring out meaning and attach the meaning of the holidays, as opposed to letting the externals of the world try to grab hold of you and take you where you should be. Like, oh, I should be feeling this way or another.
Yeah, I would completely agree with Dr. Fetzer, but also just really normalize it. I mean, immense feelings during this time is very normal. Whether you've had a loss or something significant that happened in your life, positive or negative, the holidays are still going to evoke a heightened sense of awareness and emotion. And so I think it's to be gentle on yourself as you go through this time. Know that this is a common time for people to feel whether they're not meeting the expectations of the holidays that have been set forth by media or whatever, or that they need just to have a little bit more time of solidarity, just to be gentle on yourself, and that the feelings that they have are very normal.
So that's such a great point. What about the quote unquote expectations put on people during the holiday by the media? I mean, listen, gathering with family is such a wonderful thing in theory. But sometimes the reality doesn't work out like it does on Hallmark. So how do you tamper those expectations so you don't get caught up in what Dr. Gastineau said?
Great point. And I really do want to applaud you, though, because you're using your media platform to bring about truth and meaning during this time. Instead of making it just all this pretty snow globe and cheer, and which is really wonderful and can really be a great thing. But
listen, I'll settle if the 49ers beat the Ravens on Christmas night. That's good enough for me.
I love it. But really,
sorry, Wes.
Truly, I think that what you bring about is a great question, and really it's about remembering to do what we call, especially now, digital self-care, where we can, instead of allowing the world around you to control you, really think of it about looking within and figuring out how you can control it. So it may be setting boundaries for yourself and saying, I am not going to turn on my social or pull up my social media app or turn on the TV until this time during the day, and instead I'm going to meditate, pray, whatever it is that you might be needing to do for self-care, to let you be the one that decides it, instead of saying, oh, I saw this ad, so my kids need those new red shoes, because they are out of shoes. Instead, it's connecting with your child in the moment, noticing that their little tippy toes are reaching the end of their shoes, and then going to buy the shoes. So, those are just some scenarios. That's what I would say.
Yeah, and I think really just in managing the expectations of being with family, and understanding what triggers you about certain family members, and having some self-awareness on the boundaries that you are going to set, whether that's with other people, whether that's with your digital devices. I think it's really important to kind of go in with a mental game plan, if you will, about how to be around people that we know can affect us, and to know that it's an acute time, that that you can take breaks from family members. You can, it's a season of time that will end, and you can kind of go back to your routine that makes you feel safe and comfortable.
So the ladies are going to be here through the entire show, and I want to let's take people into a bit of a boot camp about setting boundaries, because we can all be so bad at it. You just you lapse into your regular routine. You answer the phone every time it rings.
Sure.
You don't take a moment during the day to do anything just for self, even if it's just sitting and having nothing but silence.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
Yeah, great question. There's 3 questions that I like to go through and ask myself whenever I'm sitting across from another human being, and it's really, does this person want help right now or to be with me right now? Do they want that right now, and do they want that by me right now? And if there's not 3 yeses on all those things, sometimes we can find ourselves working harder than the other individual. So I'm really describing somebody that might need help, or maybe it's a family member that you've been trying so hard to connect with or overcome a hurdle. But really, it's kind of a litmus test for you to look within yourself, because ultimately, you don't have control over anybody.
Look, we're going to take a quick break and come back with the doctors talking about mental health. Y'all stay right there. Happy holidays. So the doctors are here from the Wellness Studio talking about mental health during the holiday season, and we went into break talking about how to set up boundaries and really create something to protect your mental status as you go through the end of the year, and you had kind of started talking about that.
Sure, yeah. I think that whenever you know within yourself that there's some issues that you need to be able to take care of within yourself, you know that maybe boundaries are something that you need to set with an individual, with a situation. Maybe it might be, not agreeing to cook all the sides for Thanksgiving meal because you have a lot on your plate. So it's really going to start with you, because you're really the only person that can get with yourself in silence, like you mentioned, and look within yourself and ask yourself what you have the capacity to engage in and what you don't.
Yeah, and just to contribute to what Dr. Fetzer is saying, I think a big part of it is we often are reactionary to people, especially family members that we've known pretty much our whole life and that we know by default, right? Like, we might not always choose these people to be in our lives, but here they are. And so I think if we can be mindful, and I say mindful in the sense of, like, even if it's 10 seconds, just to take a deep breath before responding to something that somebody has said that has triggered you in some way, which is valid and okay, but what you do next is going to determine whether or not you're giving that person your power. So I think being thoughtful and intentional, like Dr. Fetzer mentioned, about what are you giving this person and do they want it? And then also about really what are you willing to hand over, because it might be your peace and sanity.
I want to go back to something you referenced earlier, because, and not just during the holidays, but overall, there are people who just have this need to create the perfect image on social media of things going on. And I think that's so much pressure. No person has a great day every day. And I think it's dangerous. Am I wrong?
You're exactly right. I like to call it the devil's playground.
Okay.
Because when it comes down to it, we're talking about truth and reality. And what happens on social media is that it's partial truths. And partial truths are more dangerous than a lie. And a lot of people don't realize how much partial truths are used to deceive, maybe not intentionally, but they do. And they create deception in a way that it looks to be true, so we absorb it as truth, but really it's not truth, and we really should not build our lives off of it. And so before we know it, we find ourselves down rabbit holes of information that we've absorbed and are living off of as if it's truth. And it can take over, which can put us in, like you were saying, very dangerous situations. The other side of the coin too is you never know what's going on in that person's life that's posting, and to where if you internally are comparing yourself to that, and I'm really speaking about our young people, our youth who don't know any different other than what they're seeing on social media right now, because they didn't grow up in a time where it wasn't here. And so really they're growing up in a really fragile time where their little minds and hearts are so fragile. And so it's very normal for them to look at a picture and think, well, I wish this were this way, or I didn't have this. And before you know it, they're feeling more despair than they are joy.
Dr. Gastineau, the need to look like others. I referenced speaking to some kids a little while ago, and I told them, I said, you have the only set of fingerprints that are yours on the planet. Nobody else has your fingerprints, your DNA. but so many spend their days trying to look,
Yeah.
act, and sound like somebody else.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous. And I think we lose something when the authentic person isn't being who
Oh,
he or she
absolutely.
should be, because there's a talent there that we don't get to enjoy. How do we safeguard against our kids really being, pulled into this thing with social media and still allow them to be kids?
Exactly. It's finding a balance between the two. I think it's really important to have conversations with your kids at all ages about the use of social media or just the use of play and being creative and giving them a freedom to do so in a safe way. I think is important to foster that daily. And just know as a parent, not to put the pressure on you to get it right all the time.
Right.
I think it's really important that our children see us be very human as well. And I think it's a constant dialogue all the time that you're having.
I could not agree more about the communication piece of it with your children, and knowing that the American Academy of Pediatrics and other organizations like that we can trust, they're not advising for kids to be on social media at young ages. And so really taking that stance as a parent, which is sometimes hard because you're going against the world and swimming upstream, but telling them they're not old enough, if they're not, to even be on social
Better
media.
not give them a phone if you tell them that, though. They'll
That
find
too.
a way. They'll find a way to get on.
That's
social
why
they do.
communication. That's why the marriage of these, the
Yeah.
marriage of the two, kind of come hand
Well,
in hand.
the other part of this is we're at the period of reflection, but also preparation for a new year, which can put pressure. Every time I've ever had a really good year, I feel the pressure of thinking, how do I do it
How do I
again?
top it?
Yeah.
It's never like, man, that was great. It's like, how do you do it again? You
Yeah.
know? So how do you guard against people who are overly ambitious, not putting too much pressure on themselves? And I want you to start, and we'll take a break and come back and pick that up.
Yeah, I think it's pacing yourself. I think you don't, we do like to measure ourselves against kind of external factors, but then also internal ones. If we've had a great year, if we've had some success, we want to beat it or top it.
Yeah.
But I think it's about pacing yourself and being really intentional with the goals that you have.
We'll come back and continue with the docs and tell you how you can get in contact with them if you want to. Stay right there. So, Dr. Fetzer this morning sent me a picture of Nana, her Saint Bernard that was here on the show a few months back, who was just beautiful little puppy. Now you said the dog is 100 pounds.
100 pounds. The
7
vet just
months
weighed her.
old. Wow.
Going on 8 months old, but
So
she
here's
is
the thing.
big.
Y'all can't come back here again if you don't bring Nana. That's just the rule. They won't let y'all
I
in
told
the
you
building.
she has to have an invitation because I feel she's so large and in charge. I feel bad just showing up with her. But I also should have asked you.
Yeah, because we talked about that before.
We definitely need to bring
got
it.
on the
Yeah.
show. So we talked a little bit about kids and authenticity with them and keeping them in a good mental status. What are some things that you would recommend for a parent who wants to be constructive in how they parent their kids with social media, but also, again, giving them the boundaries to be children?
Yeah, I think, creating these opportunities of teachable moments, like whenever you're with your kids and you're out and about, I always want to do things for my kids, right? So it's giving them a little space to do that, whether that's ordering their own food at a restaurant or talking to the salesperson and asking questions like where, whatever shoes they want to buy, what aisle are they on? And you're there to help kind of facilitate that, but teaching them that kind of social independence in a healthy way, I think is important, just to have them find their little voices.
Yeah.
So one of the other things, we talk about that side of it. There are some children who are suffering in silence with depression or anxiety because of everything that goes on. Are there signs that parents, outside of just the child retreating away and being in seclusion, are there other signs that parents should be on the lookout for?
Definitely. With kids, what we see sometimes a lot is behavioral as opposed to them verbally expressing what they're experiencing. So behaviorally, it can look on both ends of the spectrum. It can be more aggressive or angry than usual, or more withdrawn or guarded than usual. So anything that that goes away from their what we would call their baseline, and really having the parent to be in tune with that is important rather than distracted in a world that is so distracting. So really being in tune with your child to ask yourself, like, are they themselves? Really checking in with them at that point and then asking the hard questions, like, are you struggling with something right now? Is there anything you want to talk to me about? And really just always encouraging that communication that Dr. Gastineau was talking about is really a great preventative for that.
And I also would say, checking in with their community, their teachers, their school counselors, or
that's
their
a great
friends
one.
and their friends' parents. I mean, I think having kind of this open network of dialogue between the people that are with your children the most is really important, because a teacher or a peer or somebody else's, another child's parent may pick up on something that you did miss or you weren't present for, which is okay. But just constantly checking in with the people who are around your children, because they're going to observe changes as well.
What is good mental health?
Great question.
It's a great question. And the more I know, the more I get into this field, the more I realize I don't know, because it's still something being studied. And that whole question of what is mental health is a question that we're still trying to answer and research, et cetera. But for me, I'd sum it up and say one that's grounded in truth, and really understands what truth is and able to kind of grasp that and live from that place of truth. Really, when you talk about a lot of the mental health disorders, they're irrational thinking or ones that are not grounded in reality. So if you really think about it, one that can be able to center at the truth, that's good. However, what I will also say is it's very rare for a human being who is broken, because we all are, to always be in this perfect state of good mental health.
Right.
So we just need to know our nature is to be broken and to deviate from that from time to time. And
Yeah, when you asked the question, the first word that came to my mind was balance. And I think that goes really well with what you just said, because it is a constant, you work at that. You just the same way you work on your physical health, but whether your diet or your exercise, I think mental health is the same strategy. What are the elements that you add to positive or good mental health that keep it functioning?
Yeah.
And so it's knowing that truth, knowing when to seek help or look for support, healthy coping skills, and finding the balance, because every day is a struggle.
I suck at the balance.
I know.
part.
We all do. We all do.
Yeah.
It's just like you
Every
go-
single one of us.
And what happens is it ends up catching up with you before you know it. It's like, man, you really got to take a couple days.
Yes.
To like,
Well, and the holidays
Yes.
are a time, I think, that it catches up with people.
Well, it does.
Very true.
That's one thing about that. I love Thanksgiving because it's pretty low maintenance.
Yeah.
Christmas, on the other hand, and I want to talk a little bit about that. That is a pressure-packed holiday for a lot of people. The need to go and spend money,
Yeah.
which impacts how you feel when the year starts, because you've spent all this money in December. You
Right.
didn't have to.
Yeah.
Right.
What's some good tips that you would give people to keep them kind of slow your roll a little bit? What would you say?
Tune out the world. Except
Tune
for,
out the world.
Except for Clay Young. Don't tune out Clay Young.
Don't tune this. I like that. Tune out the world.
Tune out the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spend more time in silence.
Yes.
Don't let Black Friday ads pressure you.
Yes. I like it.
Yeah, we were just having this conversation recently about just kind of the financial environment that our world's in right now, and how just to kind of go in with a plan / budget, but just kind of prioritize what's important to you this holiday season.
Absolutely.
And stick to it.
And
as best you
truth,
can.
too.
So we're going to ask these ladies about some things that you should do as you start your year so you can win in 2024. Everybody should win in 2024. Not really possible, but at least you can try to win in 2024. And then we'll talk about what the Wellness Studio is, what it does, and how amazing these ladies are. Back with
Thank
that
you.
in just a moment. All right, so we want to get you right for 2024. We want you to be mentally fit in the new year. So when it comes to working out or anything healthy, I like to start with what you don't do. Like that's my
that's a
attitude.
good-
Like here's the
yeah.
things you don't do. Here are the things you want to try to take off the diet. Here's the things you can't do. So let's talk about what you should not be doing if you want to be mentally fit in 2024.
That's a good question. I would say don't take on too much right away.
Oops.
Because I think we want change, right?
Yes.
That new year, and so we take on.
All right.
I'm going to do all of these things, right? I'm going to set boundaries with my family members. I'm going to seek out new relationships, or I'm going to make better efforts at communication with my friends, or whatever. And we set the bar so high that a couple weeks in, we're exhausted
Can't
and
do
we've
it.
overwhelmed
Right.
ourselves.
Yeah. And to go along with what you're saying, because I completely agree, is what not to do is don't avoid the hard truths in your life.
Right.
Tackle
I love
those
that.
problems first.
Yeah.
Go after them. Run very hard at the hard truths in your life, whether it be, think of it like a bank account. If your bank account has $50 and you can see it's not functioning well, face that hard truth and let it then point you to, okay, I can't do this year. Or so it's the same things in our lives. It's so much easier said than done. Something that's simple can be very hard at the same time. But similar to how if we know we go to the gym and we lift weights, we know we're going to see a result.
Yep, it
It
takes
will
time.
happen.
Yeah.
Same thing with our brains.
Yeah.
If we're doing the right things to take care of ourselves and our brains, we know we're going to see results. But it's hard.
And give yourself a little room. It's like
Yeah.
one bad meal won't put it on like one workout session won't take it off.
Exactly.
It takes a series of things to get there.
Yes.
And I love that because so many people start the year off like, I'm going to be a millionaire, lose 30 pounds, and be successful and married by the end of January.
Right.
That's not a real place to be, right?
Right.
And then thinking about your circle, because we haven't talked a lot about that. I think that's so important to your mental state, the people around you. What advice would you give?
Gosh, we've talked a lot about, you know, I think that making sure you have an awareness of who is shaping you.
Yeah. Just doing that audit.
Checks and balances of the people in your life.
Who are you giving more energy to than you're receiving? Is that balanced?
Yeah.
I think is important. And then also having, again, those realistic expectations. If you know that somebody feels more distant, you know, and you're checking in with that and not maybe overworking yourself, if that's just kind of where you are in that season of that relationship, that just might be where you are.
Yes.
The circle is so important. I read something one time when you're talking about auditing your circle is don't swim across a river for a person who wouldn't step across a puddle for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great point.
Yeah.
And then being able to know,
metaphor,
is there balance in the relationship? And some relationships are transactional. You're working with people, that's one thing. But the other ones, you really need to know, are they good for me? Am I good for them?
Yeah.
And that's a good, because sometimes you're the person that's the problem in the group.
Absolutely.
So how do you audit that? Auditing your circle, like really quick tips about that. What would you say?
Really what you're talking about is that step one is having the awareness. Because if somebody doesn't have the self-awareness of what we're talking about, they can't go any step further. And so first having that self-awareness, and then there's somebody, I can't remember who said this, but they've described this as being a warrior of your energy. Only you can really be a warrior of your energy, your truth, and really you should be a warrior of it, because the world, including people in your lives, will pull from that and try to take from that, sometimes unintentionally.
And life should matter, because when it's over, it's over. No matter how much you're loved, when years go by, people move on. Things stay, and it's important. So, Wellness Studio, I got a little less than a minute. Tell people about the Wellness Studio.
Sure. The Wellness Studio, we are a mental health outpatient counseling practice. We also have an IOP, which is intensive outpatient programming for people that are impacted by cancer or chronic illness. But we treat adults, families, couples, children, and do general therapy.
We've been around for 11 years.
And the website is surprisingly.well.com.
Yes.
Look
Check
at you.
them out. I
I'm proud of you.
All right, y'all. Have a great weekend. And just
Thank you,
for you,
Clay.
Wes, go 49ers.
Who dat?